"You're just an Uber driver. Stay in your lane," the venture capitalist sneered as he refused to tip. That's when Maya calmly picked up her phone, opened an app, and within seconds, his company's funding disappeared. Because what he didn't know was that 3 years ago, Maya hadn't started driving Uber to make money. She had started driving to decide which of Silicon Valley's arrogant tech bros deserved to keep their empires, and which ones needed to lose everything. Maya Chen had been driving Uber for exactly 3 years, 2 months, and 16 days, not because she needed the money, but because she needed the access. At 34, she looked like any other gig worker in Silicon Valley, worn Stanford hoodie, faded jeans, and a Toyota Camry that had seen better days. Her passengers never looked twice at her. That was exactly the point. Tonight's pickup was from VentureMax Capital, one of the most prestigious investment firms in the valley. Maya watched through her windshield as Marcus Sterling emerged from the gleaming lobby, his Italian leather shoes clicking against the marble steps, Armani suit, Patek Philippe watch, and that unmistakable air of Silicon Valley superiority that Maya had learned to recognize from a mile away. He slid into her back seat without acknowledgement, immediately launching into a phone call that filled the car with his arrogance. "No, I don't care if their AI actually helps people," Marcus barked into his phone. "Investors want growth metrics, not social impact. Triple the user acquisition numbers and bury the part about job displacement. We're selling dreams here, not unemployment statistics." Maya adjusted her rear-view mirror, studying his face as he spoke. Marcus Sterling wasn't just another venture capitalist. He was exactly the kind of person she had spent 3 years hunting. The kind who built fortunes by destroying lives, who spoke about disruption while creating human suffering, who treated service workers like invisible furniture. "And make sure the contract includes the standard non-compete clauses," Marcus continued. "If these founders try to leave, they'll find themselves unemployable in Silicon Valley for the next decade." Maya had heard enough. She knew Marcus Sterling's type because she had once been surrounded by them. Before she became an Uber driver, Maya Chen had been the youngest self-made billionaire in tech history. Chen Dynamics, her company, had quietly become the infrastructure backbone of Silicon Valley, the invisible technology that powered every app, every platform, every digital transaction that made the tech world possible. But 3 years ago, Maya had realized something that changed everything. The empire she had built was being used by people like Marcus to exploit and manipulate others. So she had disappeared from the public eye, going underground to see the true face of the industry she had created. They arrived at Marcus's destination, the exclusive Monarch Club, where Silicon Valley's elite gathered to celebrate their latest conquests. Maya pulled up to the valet stand and waited as Marcus finished his call. "Driver," he said, his tone sharp with dismissal. "You can turn off the meter now." Maya complied, watching as Marcus gathered his briefcase. But instead of getting out, he leaned forward, his eyes meeting hers in the mirror with cold calculation. "You know what your problem is?" Marcus said, his voice dripping with condescension. "People like you just don't understand how the real world works. You drive cars for a living, while people like me create the future." Maya remained silent, her hand steady on the steering wheel. "I mean, look at yourself," Marcus continued, gesturing dismissively. "What are you, 30-something? Still driving strangers around for tips? You're just an Uber driver. Stay in your lane." He pulled out his wallet, made a show of looking through it, then shrugged with fake regret. "Sorry, no cash for tips tonight. Maybe if you upgraded your service." He let the insult hang in the air as he stepped out of the car. But Maya wasn't done with him yet. She calmly picked up her phone, not the standard iPhone that most drivers carried, but a custom device that contained technology 5 years ahead of anything commercially available. With practiced efficiency, she opened an app called Executive Override, a program that existed nowhere else in the world because she had built it specifically for moments like this. Within seconds, Marcus Sterling's entire digital empire appeared on her screen. His company's financial records, investment portfolios, bank accounts, even his personal communications, all of it flowing across her display like water. Maya's fingers moved across the screen with surgical precision. A few taps here, a command there, and Sterling Ventures' primary funding source, a $500 million investment from a pension fund, simply vanished. The money didn't disappear. It was redirected to a fund Maya had established for gig workers who had been exploited by companies like Marcus's. Another tap, and Marcus's personal investment in 3 startups evaporated. The funds automatically transferred to employee compensation accounts that had been systematically underfunded. Maya had built the digital infrastructure that powered 85% of Silicon Valley's financial transactions. Every app Marcus used, every platform his business relied on, every digital service that made his lifestyle possible, she controlled it all. And tonight, she was using that power. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Transaction complete. Sterling Ventures portfolio value, $0. But Maya wasn't finished. She opened another app, one connected to the security cameras throughout Silicon Valley. Within moments, she was watching Marcus as he entered the Monarch Club, completely unaware that his financial world had just collapsed. Maya started typing a message to her team of investigators, former FBI agents, forensic accountants, and ethical hackers who had been working with her for the past 3 years. Tonight's operation would expose Marcus Sterling's pattern of fraud, his illegal non-compete agreements, and his systematic exploitation of startup founders. By morning, Marcus would wake up to find himself the subject of federal investigations, SEC probes, and civil lawsuits that would destroy not just his wealth, but his reputation. The evidence Maya had been collecting for months would be delivered simultaneously to the FBI, the Securities and Exchange Commission, and every major tech journalist in the Valley. Maya's phone chimed again. This time it was a message from Marcus himself, sent to what he thought was a generic Uber driver feedback system. Driver was unprofessional and car was substandard. 1 star. Maya smiled as she typed her response, using credentials that would make Marcus's blood run cold. Thank you for your feedback, Mr. Sterling. This is Maya Chen, CEO of Chen Dynamics. Your ride tonight was part of our new Executive Accountability Program. You'll be hearing from federal investigators within 24 hours. Have a wonderful evening. She hit send and watched through the security cameras as Marcus pulled out his phone, read the message, and went completely pale. The confident swagger that had carried him into the club disappeared instantly, replaced by the panicked expression of a man who had just realized his entire world was about to crumble. 3 years ago, Maya had been one of them, isolated in executive suites, surrounded by yes men, completely disconnected from the human cost of her success. But driving Uber had shown her something the boardrooms never could, the real people whose lives were affected by Silicon Valley's decisions. She had met single mothers working 3 gig jobs to pay rent that had been driven up by tech gentrification. She had driven laid-off workers to job interviews after their companies had been optimized out of existence. She had seen firsthand how people like Marcus Sterling treated the human beings who made their success possible. Tonight was just the beginning. Maya had identified 47 executives like Marcus, people who had built their fortunes through exploitation and corruption. One by one, she was going to hold them accountable. As Maya drove away from the Monarch Club, her phone was already buzzing with notifications. News outlets were receiving anonymous tips about Marcus Sterling's criminal activities. Federal agencies were opening investigations. And Marcus himself was probably still staring at his phone, trying to understand how an Uber driver had just destroyed his entire life. Maya Chen had once been the invisible infrastructure that powered Silicon Valley's success. Now she was the invisible force that would bring justice to its victims. And tomorrow night, she would pick up another executive, listen to another display of arrogance, and decide whether they deserve to keep their empire or lose everything. After all, she was just an Uber driver, and she was very good at staying in her lane. 6 months later, the Silicon Valley Accountability Project had exposed corruption in 17 major tech companies, resulting in $3.2 billion in fines and restitution paid to exploited workers. Marcus Sterling was serving a federal prison sentence for securities fraud, his assets liquidated to compensate the startup founders he had systematically cheated. Maya continued driving Uber, but now her passengers included many of the workers who had benefited from her justice campaign. They still didn't know who she really was, but they no longer had to worry about exploitation from corrupt executives. The tech industry was slowly learning a hard lesson. In Silicon Valley, you never really know who's driving your Uber. Sometimes it's the person who built the very system that can make or destroy you. And she's always watching. If this story of justice and accountability touched your heart, hit that like button, share it with someone who believes in fighting for the underdog, and subscribe for more stories that prove no one is truly untouchable. Your support helps us continue exposing the truth.